Hello, comrades, brothers and sisters. Welcome to the second webinar of the International Network of Anti-Fascist Trade Unions. Today, as you know, we will talk about Europe in the view of the upcoming European election of next June. Last Sunday, as many of you know, the extreme right party Vox organized a meeting with all the right-wing parties from Europe and from all over the world in Madrid. And they clearly expressed the common goals and themes that characterize extreme right politics. As CGL, we shared in our appeal to vote for the EU election, the call from ETUC manifesto on party movements, workers to repeal the threat of the far right that as we all know, attacks trade unions and their democratic rights and dismantle human rights and particularly women's rights. As ETUC does, we think that cooperation with far-right forces in the European Parliament must be strongly rejected because far-right objectives are in profound contrast with all the things that we pursue as international democratic and anti-fascist trade union movement. But the threat is real. And the danger of a possible post-election alliance could also hand us a Europe very much influenced by right-wing forces with the consequences that we can all imagine. So from this perspective, our discussion today is strongly important and fundamental and can bring us a new perspective in the fight against far rights. As we have already done during the precedent webinar on the Americas, well, we will have 2 hours. The first hour, we will have 4 speakers. The first speaker will be Magdalena Chojniowska, lead specialist for international relations from OPZZ, Poland. The second speaker will be Andrea Malpassi, advisor of the European and International Department, CGL, Italy. The third will be Pekka Ristela, Head of International Affairs from SAC Finland. And the Thomas Channel will conclude, will leave us a framework of conclusion from ETUC, and he is advisor in charge of the Anti-Far Right Working Group. After the speeches, we will open the debate. So I invite you to register virtually, raising your hand or writing in the chat. And now, just to not lose time, I pass the floor to Magdalena for their speech.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be with you and to have this speech, to share the experiences that we been through for over the last 8 years. And the beginning, I decided to show you the history, to see the picture, and especially how what can be done, what are the threats for the other societies in other countries when in the election will win many far right or far right parties. That it is. If I can ask Salvador to spread the presentation, to open it. Yeah. So, okay. So for the beginning, I would like to say that the core of ideology promoted by Law and Justice is concern for the family in the personal solidarity and reference to Christian roots. The ruling party has positioned itself as a natural ally of believers in Poland, so that is why it tightened the bonds with the church. Later on, it has as well consequences to tighten the women's rights and many other things that will be established. I will show later. Please, next slide. However, Yeah. However, the strongest bond has united some of the hierarchy and the injustice in the fight against gender ideology on the what we call LGBT ideology. It is still presented actually as a threat to traditional family, and it is supposed to remove the possibility for parents to raise their children according to their beliefs. We observed a few years ago um, discriminatory actions. It was established in some of areas that places free for LGBT. Actually, later on, it was called free from ideology of LGBT, but still it harm causes, and it is remembered until today. The next things that we can see, please next slide. It was that the ideology was spread everywhere. For example, it was invented a new subject in high school, in the first class. It was typical, it was called history and the present, and it reflects the law and justice ideology. Actually, in this book, everything is good, like the blue hand, and or wrong. There's no distinguishing. It's only just like this. It's not like real life. It doesn't learn young people the shadow of gray. The, that's what life looks like. Yes, next please. The next thing, what was very terrifying for the democracy and for our let's say for our rights, it was, if we can call it, reforms of Minister of Justice, Mr. Ziobro, who was at the same time the general prosecutor. And now it's appeared the question, what if I do something that my government do not like, if the Minister of Justice is at the same time the general prosecutor? Of course, Chamber became particularly notorious when the Court of Justice, I'm sorry, additionally to discipline the judges, the Law and Justice established chamber. It was disciplinary chamber, and it became particularly notorious when the Court of Justice of the European Union ruled that it's not independent court and cannot then rule, but actually it stays as the obligatory, and the government respected it. Of course, it was natural that we have to mention about the Constitutional Tribunal. The procedure and what is happening in the legal system was very complicated, let's say. But the core of what I would like to say is that members of the parliamentaries from the lower chamber were put into the Constitutional Tribunal. So there is, of course, possibility that they will not rule according to the law, but according to the law and justice priorities, because long time they were alliance, they were all the law and justice representatives. Thank you. And the effect of that was that was disputed in Poland so many times. It was just lack of EU funding from the EU recovery and resilience mechanism that we are waiting for after the COVID pandemic, when we would like to create new workplaces to help people. But it didn't happen until this year, when the coalition won the elections. Actually, it's a phenomena that as a party, Law and Justice won. They won the elections, but they do not have majority to rule. Next slide, please. And of course, in October 2020, the Constitutional Court ruled that the possibility of abortion due to severe and irreversible fetal disability or an incurable disease threatening its life is unconstitutional according to Polish law. So the women's rights were taken away. And it was the biggest, they were the biggest manifestations after the collapse of communism in Poland. We have never seen so many people on streets to fighting about their rights, the natural basic human rights, to protect themselves, to protect women rights, women life. Please, next one. And the media was the first sphere that Learn Justice addressed immediately after 2015. It appeared that we thought that maybe it will sustain, it resist that the influence from the government, but unfortunately it was taken over, and it was typical tuba of propaganda. The person who was responsible for propaganda in peace were not nominated as a CEO of the television. Moreover, we saw cooperation, our government, with other countries and support with ideas. So we have the copy paste from the Orban activities that to the state-owned company, PiS bought one of the biggest publishing groups in Poland by taking over publishing house Polska Press, we call it. Orlen, the company that belonged to a public company, belonged to the government, became de facto owner of more than 24 national dailies. Next, please. Next slide. The effect of that, it was deep, very deep polarization in Polish society. Next, please. So yeah, it was just maybe can be very interesting that during the elections, law and justice used Pegasus. Pegasus. It's a program, malware program for spying. Pegasus. It was as a surprise. It was bought from the Polish Justice Fund. And they spying not only parliamentaries or opposition, but also journalists, prosecutors. So the actions that they take up were very, very dangerous. And actually, everything, it was a dismantling Polish democracy, Polish system. Thank you. Next one. Yeah, the challenges of the political challenges posed by the growing authoritarian and far-right sentiments in Poland was included as in the Polish in the OPZZ program from 2027 as the main challenges that we have to face up in this this cadency of the OPZZ president. Please, next. What do we do to resist? So we have the reflector. It's very well known here in Poland. And the reflector is a study aimed at assessing compliance of the electoral programs of the nationwide election committees. We thought also to do about the European parliamentary elections, but not this time. We decided to take another steps. So yes, in the previous edition, in previous edition, the study implementation began with mailing a questionnaire to the election committees. The questionnaire contained 40 OPZZ postulates, grouped, as you can see on the right side, grouped into 11 thematic categories. Actually, unfortunately, despite repeated attempts to contact all the electoral committees, only the left replied, and the rest, to assess the compliance with the OPZZ program, we had to ask our specialists and experts to prepare analysis based just on the program of the parties. And instead, as a result, we have very good alliance, actually 100% with Lewica that we cooperated with. The next one is Learn Justice. And this is something that our far right is doing. They say that they protect the people. They go into our prerogatives, our trade union prerogatives. They give the money. And on the other hand, put the taxes. It's only they cover, right, the real intentions, but the people cannot see it. It's very not easy to change people's perspective because it needs many debates or education. Please, next one. Next slide. So, of course, we cooperate in Economic and Social Council in Poland. Next, please. As you can see, as I mentioned before, we cooperate with the ministry actually of Minister of Family, Labor and Social Policy was nominated from the left. And then that is why we have possibility to cooperate very closely on the labor rights. Next, please. As well, we have often, like all of us actually, meetings in the government places. Next, please. Yeah, so as I can say before, so very important to us is to change the perspective of people. We do try to do it horizontally. So not only to the manifestations, seminars or training, as you can see here, but for the but it covers general to raise awareness about the far right. Next, please. And next one. No, this I will skip this time. And next, the last. Yeah, about the elections to European Parliament. So we are currently in the beginning of the trade union of the OPZZ campaign of our campaign, or the OPZZ priorities in reference to upcoming European Union election. Of course, that through this all of the meetings we spread the most important priorities from E2UC, but as well the OPZZ presidium adopted a position on the priorities that in which they highlight that the Europe of the future is social progress. It is not possible without effectively protected labor rights. EU policy must promote the European social model, peace, democracy, protect human rights and the global economic, as well as pursue to gender equality. So the opposite calls people to take part, to all of our members, to take part in European elections, to vote only for these people who can be guaranteed the priorities that to guarantee work on priorities that we launch in this letter. And that is why actually for us, everything is like in a clock. Everything is interconnected. So in this way, we're trying to do, especially that yes, and I think that this is it. So I would like to thank you for this moment that I could share. If you have any questions, this is my phone number. Of course, later on, because now I'm available. But later on, if something came up to your mind, you can also always ask me, text me, and I reply. If not, I will find some information. Thank you.
Thank you, Magdalena, for having shared with us your experience and for the hard work you are doing there in your country. Your intervention was quite inspiring. Now I pass the floor to Andrea Malpassi from CGIL to speak about Italian situation. Andrea, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Nicoletta. I think that you know our situation is a little better than me, of course. Well, if you want to reason now about how a trade union, CGIL in this case, can deal with the right in Italy in the context of this European election campaign, we should start with how the right is actually governing in Italy. The right has been in power in Italy for the last few years, and now we can well define its governing profile. I would divide into three main ideological axes the way of government of this right. The first axis is in economic policies. This right is fiercely neoliberalist. I list application of every measure linked to austerity, cut in all public services, health, school, transport, everywhere. And of course, in the same time, incentive to the privatization in the same sectors. Cancellation of any social measures for the poorest people. Refusal to introduce the minimum wage. Weakening of every form of social dialogue. No fight, absolutely no fight against the tax evasion, and in the same time, policy of amnesties on this. The conflict of interest now is so high since the Berlusconi era. Just an example of it. The more recent ones. The use of public beaches to private individuals for the derisory amount of money and for long periods. You know, the Italian Minister of Tourism is involved in this kind of affairs. And the Minister of Defense in Italy, talking about conflict of interest, for years has been a consultant and now is at stake in Leonardo Army Industries. The second feature of this government is about foreign policy. Is totally uncritically Atlantist in any geopolitical approach. Maybe they have something linked to their past, of course, to be forgiven for. But now, talking about the situation in Ukraine or talking about the situation in Gaza and in Palestine, this government is uncritically, totally on the side of any policies of the United States or of Israel. And at the same time, again, with the conflict of interest, Italy is the only country that have secretly kept a secret on what kind of armies we are giving to Ukraine. Not even the parliament, the Italian parliament, was informed about this. And the third specific characteristic of this right-wing government in Italy is about civil rights, cultural policies, the idea they have of democracy, and the way they manage power. This government shows the worst conservative, traditionalist, nationalist, intolerant, and authoritarian traits. In Italy, as you know, all of this as a name. This government in this sector is culturally fascist. List again. Denial of LGBTQA plus rights. Just know, Italy did not sign the EU declaration in occasion of the World Day against homotransphobia. We have an attack against the right of abortion. Catholic associations were now included inside the counseling centers for women. There is an attack against the right of strike. The right wing is occupying systematically all the public information system, while in the meantime, you know, the private media system is still in the hand of the Berlusconi family. In the last few weeks, the students went in the streets protesting against the war in Palestine, of course, and they were charged by police. And most serious, this government is bringing up a reform of the state and the electoral law with the idea of centralizing all the powers in the hand of just a single figure elected directly by the people. So cutting any form of intermediation in a form of democracy that we have in Italy, that of course doesn't allow to have all the powers in the hand of just one person. In short, the Italian constitution, written by those who defeated fascism, could be rewritten now by those who are the heirs of that experience. In the past, even together inside the ETUC moments and assemblies, or even in this network, we analyzed the causes that brought the right into the government in Italy. The social discontents that didn't find in Italy adequate answers from the institution, not even from the governments where progressive forces sometimes were present. And all this discontent in Italy is still here, of course. The economical condition and the social condition are just worsening now. But all this discontent is not yet translated into an electoral rejection of the right at the government. In this moment, we don't know about the polls, what are the polls saying in Italy, but the right wing, and mostly the Giorgia Meloni party, Fratelli d'Italia, appears to be still the first party in Italy. Maybe sometimes the progressive forces, political parties in Italy are too linked with the past experience of government, or on some issues they keep a sort of ambiguous attitude. But to be honest, I put in this way: the disappointment over the bet that the people made on the right has not yet found an alternative in our country. And in fact, abstention is rampant in our country, as never before in our history. As trade union, I come to our part, as trade union, as CGIL in particular, is dedicated, our work, our effort is dedicated to this, to truly represent social discontent, to be in the places of conflict, to bring the issues of labor and rights back to the center of national political debate. For some years now, we've been using a slogan. We call it our activities as street union. I'm not so able to translate it. We could say union on the road or something like union from the block. I don't know. It means, quite simply, returning to our original missions. There is a great commitment of CGIL using the new media, all the digital unionist digital tools for unionism, but in the same time, our investment is in the traditional task of trade union, to be physically next to people, to organize them, to create communities at sectorial level and at territorial level. So we had, we kept you informed all the time, a lot of demonstrations, strikes, campaigns, and every single time starting with involving our delegates in the workplaces, starting from the very first moment involving them. We came to this European election with the ETUC manifesto. We strongly believe in it. We think that is a perfect tools for this election. We decided to spread it through all of our structures, the delegates. We promoted and animated debates, a network of specific initiative on it. Just yesterday, we had a big one in Perugia, in a school, in front of more than 600 students, with our General Secretary, Maurizio Landini, and with Esther Lynch. We presented the ETUC manifesto for the election, and we also presented our appeal as CGIL for the vote in this election. Our appeal is, of course, inside the values and the main words of the ETUC manifesto, translated for the Italian condition and situation. Mostly, we call it the people to go to vote. I talked about the abstention problem, and we even said to the political parties that they have to be able to talk about concrete issues for the people interest. In these weeks as CGIL, we are working on 4 referendums. We are getting signature on to be able to present them and to bring them to the vote. We presented 4 referendums. They are about, the first one is for reinstatement of workers in workplace in the event of unjustified dismissal. The second one is for abolish the 6-month ceiling on compensation for dismissal. The third one, to combat precariousness by abolishing the rules that liberalized temporary employment. And the last one, for of course, we are very concerned about the situation of the work at debt that we have in Italy, more than 3 per day now, to extend the ability in case of accident at work to the company owning the starting contract. So we are trying to get this signature. The idea is very simple, to bring back labor and rights to the center of political debate, That's our goal, simply. And to bring it out in a structured and credible way. And it could help us to show, finally, the big contradiction that there is between what the right promised during the electoral campaign and what the right actually does when it is at government. It happens in this day, talking about the reflection of it in the European election campaign, that all the leaders of the Progressive Party just signed for our referendum. Elly Schlein, the leader of the Democratic Party, Giuseppe Conte, the leader of the Five Star Movement, Fratoianni, the leader of the left-wing party, they all signed for our referendum. So our effort to bring the work issue inside the electoral campaign agenda is starting to give us some results. So that's our job to be short. It's a long, patient plan that we have in front of us, of course. We could call it, as usual, an attempt to rebuild a sort of cultural hegemony that we are trying to do. And but after all, as the same Gramsci said, just when all seemed lost, and 2 years ago in Italy, everything seems lost for us, one must just stubbornly get back to work. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. And so you can all see that we are really working strong and we must keep on doing it. Now I pass the floor to Pekka from SACA Finland for his speech.
Thank you, Nicoletta. In Finland, we have a center-right, far-right coalition in power since June last year, including parties affiliated to EPP, ECR, and Renew groups in the European Parliament. So a center-right, far-right coalition. From the very beginning, this government outlined a wide program of cuts to workers' rights and social benefits and started rushing it through, bypassing real, meaningful negotiations, and thereby ending the decades-long tradition of strong tripartite social dialogue that Finland used to be known for. Among the first steps of the government's anti-social program, they wanted to limit the right to strike. And this reform came into force last Saturday, which means that from now on, for example, political strikes will be limited to 24 hours maximum. This and many other elements of the new legislation are in contradiction with ILO conventions, but the government doesn't seem to care. Already earlier this year, the government started cutting social benefits, in particular unemployment benefits, with dire consequences, especially for the unemployed with lowest incomes. And there are more to come, like, for example, changes to the collective bargaining system that would tilt the balance of power towards the employers, opening more room for unbalanced company-level bargaining. And this again would most probably lead into weaker sectoral collective agreements, and this in contradiction to the EU minimum wages directive. We have resisted these developments with campaigns, including several waves of political strikes. And political strikes are normally very rare in Finland, but in this situation, they have enjoyed the support of a large majority of workers. And we will continue to resist, even though this particular means the political strikes now have been limited. But we will continue to resist using all legal means, including international channels through the ILO and EU mechanisms. What is clear for us is that we are witnessing a dangerous international trend characterized by traditional center-right and right-wing parties cooperating with the far right in order to push through their neoliberal policies. And at the same time, they are normalizing the racist, nationalist, anti-intellectualist politics of the far right that are built on hate and exclusion. I also think that it's important to consider the role of the radicalization we have seen among business circles and employer organizations, because it also plays a role in creating the situation where the far right can rise to power. In Finland, we have seen employer organizations taking consecutive steps away from our once comprehensive and I would say successful model of bipartite and tripartite social dialogue. And they have pushed hard for a system change. And now they have a government that executes their program. Those with neoliberal economic and labor market plans were now ready to accept the far right as partner to get what they want. And on the other hand, the once somewhat, although selectively social tones within the Finns party, the far right party, were shed altogether. And the racist and nationalist core of their thought and their identity was now connected to neoliberal policies instead, because that was the way for them for power. And this dangerous phenomenon that we face in many countries is strongly international in nature, and therefore also our response must be fundamentally internationalist, and trade unions must play a key role in it. We must be clear and consistent on our values and principles, and steadfast in our defense of democracy and universal human rights, including workers' and trade union rights, of course. And one important step in this movement is the European elections in little over 2 weeks' time. And here we must be clear. It's very easy and simple to show which parties have supported workers' rights and which haven't. And those who haven't cannot be relied to do that in the future either. And quite the contrary, the same parties that have attacked our rights at the national level can and should be expected to do the same at the EU level, if ever they get the power to do so. And the voters need to know this. At the same time, of course, we need a positive vision for Europe. And here the ETUC, in cooperation with different progressive actors, is essential. And I think we still have a long way to go to make this common European vision a truly common one, shared by workers across Europe. But I do believe that we are on the right track, building joint answers that one day will help us retake the initiative back to the progressive forces. Thank you.
Thank you, Pekka. Also from your speech, we have understood that all the far-right government seem to have very issues in common and a lot of objectives. They share the same objectives. And this is very dangerous. And as you said, we have to fight at international level. Now I pass the floor for the last speech, then we will open the debate to Thomas. Where is Thomas? Okay.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys. Just let me share the screen to make sure that you can see my slides. Is that good?
Yes, but we see it, if you can enlarge it.
You see the small one. Yeah.
Yes.
Let me share, because then it'll be easier for you to see if I just share this one here. This one will come up. And I assume this is better?
Perfect.
Okay, perfect. All right, thank you very much. Thank you very much for your presentation, Magdalena, Andrea, and who was just there, Pekka. Thank you very much. I think that it is true that what we're trying to build here is the European movement. So let's get into some of the things that some people have seen a little bit before. Let's give the European context and then go into what sort of the ETUC's role has been throughout these elections, what we've been asked to do in our fight against the far right, and how we've linked that up with specifically in the European elections due to this time. So let's go to the next slide here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show, here's Germany. I'm going to show the largest member states that send the most amount of MEPs to the parliament. So we're going to have Germany, we're going to have France, we're going to have Italy. First three. Then I'm going to show you a national context. If you see over the 3 years, the trend is up. AFD, there in the light blue, I suppose, has been moving up rapidly. They've had a little bit of a drop, but notice in these graphs, these are 3 years, so they're long-term trends, and you can see that they have risen kind of spectacularly over the last bit. Next trend is in France. Now, France is a bit different because of their parliamentary and presidential system. So let's focus on the EU elections. Here you have the Liberals going down, you have the Socialists going up, and I mean, we can't really ask questions, but if I were to ask who's at the very top there in dark blue, that is the Rassemblement National, that is the far right in France. They are largely ahead for these European elections if they were to be held tomorrow. Here's Italy. Italy shifts again over the 3 years. As you can see, over the 3 years, there's been a massive shift towards Giorgia Meloni's party, Fratelli d'Italia, and it's been a complete shift from what you can see, even in look in 2021, 2022, and then they took power and they've been up at the top. And we'll see how the European elections go, but these are the trends. Now, I show here this national context. This is Austria. And the reason I show Austria is you can update it from whether there are 27, 28, but the FPÖ is would lead the elections. They would win the most seats. It does not mean that they would form the government, very similar to what Magdalena said when it came to the Polish context. However, the vote, we hold it tomorrow. This is what we get. And I think the Austrian elections, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's September, maybe early October, I think September, and they will vote. And if it stays this way, the far right will be in the first place. So here, this is what we decided to do. In 2021, the ETUC took an overview of how the European Parliament looked. And if you see, the regular Conservatives have the most seats, followed by the Socialists, then the Liberals, then the Greens. But notice these two groups here, Identity and Democracy and European Conservatives and Reformists. Already in 2021, if you added those two parties up, you would get the largest opposition group. So they're already on the high trend. And just know that some parties are in one. We're talking with the Italians here. Giorgia Meloni is in ECR, and Identity and Democracy has Lega. So it depends. In France, I told you that Rassemblement National is Identity and Democracy, and Eric Zemmour is in ECR. So it depends where they are. With these groups, we have a cordon sanitaire that you passed at the executive committee at the ETUC against these groups. So the election polls, this is what we have. We have the three progressive groups, the left, the socialists, and the Greens. And then we have the Liberals and the Conservatives, and then the two far-right groups, according to our cordon sanitaire at the ETUC. Here we have the elections are held tomorrow. These groups go down 38 seats. Next, 21 seats down. The 38 seats in the first group, mainly due to a collapse in the Green vote, and the 21 seats, mainly due to a collapse in the Liberal vote. And here, we would have a large increase if the vote were held tomorrow for the far-right groups. Now, I think you'll notice here that they don't all add up to the numbers from the 2021, but that is because if you think about Viktor Orban's party, he's no longer in any group. It just depends. There's some non-inscrit as well, but the trends are pretty clear right in front of you on the screen that all the parties are going down except the far right. That's the trend. Now, the Parliament breakdown. If you look at the previous election, the colors are a little bit wild, a little bit of a fever dream. But I think what you see here is what the media, if anyone's been reading the media on the European elections, it's been very clear that don't worry, from the EPP all the way to the left, they will be able to have the grand coalition against the far right, against ID and ECR. Now that seems to be true because look, 2024, here's the seat projection. It looks similar that if you have all the parties together, they're able to vote them down. But here's the issue that I think that we need to have on our radars as trade unionists, is that different legislative actions at the European Parliament are voted on vote by vote, package by package. And that means that what you could have regular conservatives from the EPP voting along with ID and ECR, and they would have a majority to pass legislative acts. So that's a major problem, because if you look at the historical records, the far right has never been able to come to power without the implicit or explicit support of regular conservative parties. So we have to continue to push, as we've been saying at the ETUC, that there will be no, and Nicoletta started with, there will be no cooperation with far right groups. If you see here, just a couple of weeks ago, the Party of European Socialists did pledge that they would never work with the far right groups. That's great. There's one. We need to continue to push to make sure that they are always held off the outside and they're not included in the regular party groups. Now, I wanted to show you sort of how people are voting, where the support is coming from, because it's often asked, why do people vote for the far right? Why are they not voting for Progressive Party? Why are they not voting Liberal? Why are they not voting Conservative? So here, this is a study from that ETUI, our institute here, helped fund. And if you'll notice here, this is right-wing populist electorates, generally people that vote for far-right parties. And if you'll notice, in yellow, it's only economic concerns. And in light blue, only cultural concerns. And the reason that the ETUI was able to do this research and show this graph is that oftentimes what we hear is different parties say, oh, no, we need to talk about the culture war. Things that are made up, the gender agenda, as you brought up earlier, these things that are just not real, wokeism. But if you look, you see all the majority here is largely economic and cultural concerns. They link the economic with the culture. And that goes back to Andrea's point about trying to put social and economic issues back at the forefront. If you look at center-left electorates, also, majority of their support is not culture. They don't, in Eastern Europe, just voting on cultural issues is 3% support. Most of their issues are either economic or economic and cultural linked. So we just saw this at the Eurobarometer very recently, just maybe 2 weeks ago, when they asked people, has your standard of living decreased? 45% say, yeah. Your lives have not changed, 49. Your standard of living has increased, 6. We're talking about half of the people that think that they are worse off now than they were a few years ago. That is the problem. And that's something the far right has been able to capitalize on. Because I'll give a little bit of a thing from the European side here. If you look at political advertising, some of the older ones, if you take the AfD from Germany here, you have this one, which is just a more regular, what you might expect, a caricature of the far right, a racist. You see this white woman who is pregnant. It says, new Germans, we make them ourselves. And this is something that you would find in the regular nativist rhetoric, that, oh, we need more white Europeans. Here we have it. Vote for us. Vote for the AfD. And then here you have something where it starts to shift a little bit, but still similar. We have Vlaams Belang, that's in the country I live in, the far right party, where it's saying, look, protect your elderly because immigrants are going to attack them. So then it started to link specifically to safety, less nativist of the Germans, but a little bit more on safety. And then here we have Spain. You kind of come up with these almost these fabrications. But look, it says, if you can see that well on your screen, it says an unaccompanied minor gets 4,700 euros a month. What does your grandmother get? Your grandmother gets 426 euros. How is that fair? Now, whether that's true or not, this is our Spanish comrades can say. But the issue that I'm trying to share that we have seen is that they are now linking specific issues that they have, their racist issues, their cultural issues, to the economic plane. So they're trying to say, look, you have real economic problems, but they're linked to somebody else. They're linked to women. They're linked to immigrants. They're linked to somebody that is not you. And then here, this is not an ad, but if you see, this is because we were just in Ireland doing this, you see, how's the Irish, not the world? Because obviously the far right cares about housing. I mean, that's the joke, right? Is that they come out and they say, we do care about your economic issues, but it's the fault of somebody else. The world is coming in. That's why we do not have enough houses. So election interest. What do the European elections look like? Election interest is up on the general population and on the youth interest. So young people are going to vote more, and just the general population will vote more. That's good. But it's different by country. So if you see here, if you can see that on your screen, Belgium having the highest turnout, that's because Belgium has mandatory voting, so everybody's going to be there voting anyway. So you get a very high vote. But look down from the last election. I mean, the UK was still there back then, but look in Portugal or Bulgaria or Croatia, Czech Republic, you're talking like 70% of the population just doesn't even cast a vote. So that's something that we have tried as the ETUC to discuss in our working group to get out the vote as much as possible. I'm just going to share these quickly because we talked about it. Something that Andrea was saying, that you were trying to push specific social and economic issues into the workplace, to put a working life back in at the forefront. And I think in the Spanish election, I will say first that I'm not going to share any perfect elections because there just isn't one. And this is not a perfect election either. But in the Spanish election, the polls showed Vox going up, rising in polls. But you'll see in 2023, they've in fact gone down. And that is because our Spanish comrades went to workplaces and they had a specific campaign against the far right and to vote for progressive economic issues. And like I say, not a perfect election, but the far right did retreat. So there is hope that when you act, things do change. I'll share the Polish election, like Magdalena said. You can see that the Law and Justice Party still won the election, not a perfect election. But I bring Poland up for a reason because, okay, so Law and Justice did not get the majority. They were not able to hold on to their power. This is a better election. But watch this. This is the thing. If I go back to how the youth are going to vote more, I want to share something with you that often you hear, which is if only we got more young people to vote. If more young people voted, we would change things. But here's the youth vote in Poland. Now, these colors, you got left side, you got right side. It might be opposite on your screen. You got the two sides. One side are young women, one side are young men. On the young women's side, 18 to 29, look at who they voted for. The last party they voted, the last party they chose was Confederation. Confederation is in the Identity and Democracy group. They're the far right. And look at men, though. Men voted 18 to 29 at the highest level. The number one pick for them was the far right party. So there's some kind of toxic masculinity that is going on with young men that they are leading to vote for these parties. So just know that when we're talking about the youth need to go out and vote, they need to vote for something. And this is where we have come in at our discussions, is European concerns. What do they care about? People care about 93% rising cost of living. They care about poverty. They care about climate change, the spread of war in Ukraine and in Gaza, the risk of nuclear incidents. This is what is on the mind of Europeans. Do you see migration there? I don't. I mean, migration is on the list further down, but not at the top. And then what do you ask? What do you want in your new parliament? This is what we ask Europeans. Top 3 topics. We already talked about public health, fight against poverty, climate change, supporting economy and jobs, protection of human rights, democracy, freedom of speech. So these are the major issues that people are asking for. And that is what we created, you created for us, was the ETUC election manifesto that is based on our action program, which is to directly answer the issues that Europeans care about, which is economic and social. And so we created this election group, right, which is to counteract narratives and to share material. And that was made up of groups from the Youth Committee representatives, Women's Committee representatives, FERPA, who are the retired persons. So we have young, old, elderly, youth, and the anti-far right working group. So we created this election working group to share best practices and share materials in what we were doing across the continent. And, you know, we were in the European Parliament, manifesto launching, getting all the democratic parties together. We marched in the streets for the first time in quite some time. No to austerity. We marched in Paris. We marched in Brussels. Many of you marched in the streets. Pika was sharing how you don't see a lot of strikes in Finland, and now we're starting to see some action. So we are out there pushing for our narratives. And so we say manifesto, you talked about the presentation that CGIETA did with their manifesto and getting out the vote for the European election. We have had it translated in all of our languages and getting the ideas out that we stand for, that you created, mobilizing, getting out to the street, going on labor action, party engagement. We've talked to political parties and pushed for our manifesto to be inside their manifestos, which you saw. I mean, Magdalena did a great job showing this graph of who took it and who didn't. And then we tried to do something very similar with us, highlighting votes. The far right says one thing, oh, we stand for workers, and then they vote against workers' interests every single time. When it comes to, Should we tax corporations? No, said the far right. Absolutely not. We shouldn't tax corporations. So we bring that up, and we will be sharing op-eds, which my colleagues just over here, they can't see me, but just our colleagues are writing out the op-eds to share with all the affiliates to be able to modify to your national position and then put it out to say, this is how they voted, you know, make up your mind. May 1st, we did big events for the European elections linked and executive committees. We brought all the lead candidates, as many as we could, to be able to discuss with our members how we can fight the far right and fight for progressive and social options. And that's all I have for my presentation of where we go and how that kind of streamlines from my other comrades who went before me. But thank you very much, and I look forward to any questions that we have.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you for your presentation. There is someone who is going out, is going away. So please, if you can, just send to me also your presentation, so I can send to everyone who's attending together with the Magdalena presentation. Absolutely. And now, comrades, I think that we can open the debate. And okay, I have we already have one hand raised. That's Fabio Gelfi. So I invite you all to raise your hand or write in the chat. Now I pass the floor to Fabio.
Yes, good morning, everyone. Good afternoon. Nice to see so many friends and comrades there. Hi, Tom. Hi, Andrea. Hi, Magda, and many others. I wanted to take the floor immediately because I will come just after Tom's presentation, because I want to mention an experience we are trying to develop and to run at territorial level, as we, CGIL Lombardia, are responsible for the international activity of CGIL Lombardia and Comisiones Obreras of Catalonia, which is a twin organization for us. We started to exchange during the pandemic about the need to accelerate our experience and strategy on digitalization, internal digitalization. And this was an exchange of practices from different approaches, being different organization and reaching a lot of. And of course, communication is a key part of the digital strategy for us. And it has to be stressed, this is internal and external, because we discovered how it's important to keep also a strategy of digitalization through the internal frameworks based on some clear principles: participation, democracy, and inclusion, in order to develop different tools, but first of all, with a different vision than the market. So we discovered that our comrades in Catalonia develop mobile application serving works council members activity. And they have a very good and well-structured framework of communication, mobilizing activists from the top to the base. And we brought in the data protection and the direct contact with the members. And now we are in condition to contact, for example, about a campaign that I will explain, 90,000 people by app, mobile app, 250,000 by mail, and another 1,000 by messages given by our platform. And this gave us the idea to play a role under the ETUC umbrella, trying to be stronger operating transnationally and connecting territories from the local level. And the interesting event are the EU elections. For the political reasons that you well explained, these are sensitive for all of us. And this pushed us to move on, because we thought and we are sure that trade union movement has a lot to say, has a clear vision, social, civil, economic justice. And the idea is to have a common campaign, because we see this stronger between Comisiones Obreras of Catalonia and CGIL Lombardia, in order to spread out a common message on the election, to participate and to bring up our words on how it could be Europe. The point is that this is possible thanks to one precise thing, the ETUC manifesto. because the ETUC manifesto is a common political position democratically approved by all the trade union movements. And so this is a strong position, a strong document of all of us, and it became by nature an asset for sharing a campaign. And this is what is making possible for us to develop this idea, crossing our respective experiences. And this is what we are going to do in the last weeks before the election on social networking, developing video messages from Catalonia and Spain coming to Lombardy and Italy with subtitles and vice versa. We will try to connect the points with our messages of the points of the ETUC manifesto with the local issues in order to talk about our situation, about our conditions to our people, but with the same words of the manifesto, and at the same time to develop a common narrative, which is the principle which pushed us to try this experience, because it's an experience, it's something innovative for us. We never did it before. And it's innovative also because when we start to talk about digitalization, we were thinking on the need to face the issue of trade union renewal. And so we were thinking what we can do. And the first asset was we should do more together. We should do more together, and we should do more together using new tools established and governed by our vision. And this is something that I wanted to stress because it's bringing us through a strong capacity building process by itself through this experience. And it is possible, I repeat it, because it comes by a common field given by the umbrella of the ETUC on which we can move easily, sharing a common strategy of communication and showing how we can be stronger acting together at international level by also the local territories. And so this is something that definitely will be an asset for our experience in the future, and we will continue. But I wanted to mention immediately, as you made all this reference, Tom, to the manifesto and the potential given by the manifesto. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Fabio, for sharing with us your territorial experience together with Commissione Obreras Catalunya. And now, who wants to do some question or who wants to take the floor? I can see any. Let me see if there is something in the chat. No. Is there anybody who wants to enter? Oh, FFT, okay. FGTB Belgium, Rafael Lamas, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, everyone. Rafael from FGTB Belgium. Thanks for the presentation, very interesting. And as you said, thanks for sending us document. I think there is a lot, in fact, of initiative taking all the countries, and I will put in the chat one of the FGTB concerning a brochure we are making on 13 arguments. So why they are lying us? They lie, and we have to explain. And I will send also a second one. But I just maybe raise two questions to the different panelists. It's because for me, nobody has the magical word. In Belgium, for instance, the far right, especially in Flanders, in the north part of the country, they are rising since more than 30 years. And we have made a lot of initiative, but they are still there and they are stronger than ever. So nobody has the perfect solution, and we know that it's going to be a long-run fight today and in the future. Two questions. One, on the experience in the different countries who have already far right or in the governments or supporting right governments, it's how do you deal with them? because we say, for instance, in Belgium, we have a cordon sanitaire. Different persons have already mentioned this concept. But when they are in the government, what we do? Because we have to speak with them as social partners. So how to manage it will be interesting for us. Maybe tomorrow there will be also a government in Belgium with far-right support. I hope not, but it can be. So it's interesting to know how do you manage this kind of situation in the different countries where there is already a far-right presence in the government or with support. And the second question is maybe a little more sensitive, but it's difficult because in our trade union movement, because we are not all the members of the E2C on the same line. I don't have to mention, but in Poland, there are 2 trade unions. In Italy, there is 3 trade unions. And seeing that from Belgium, I don't have the impression that maybe certainly for the another one, but for the third trade union, I will not mention because I think that everyone understands what I say. They have not the same position. So how do you deal the discussion and the tension between the trade unions in such a situation? Because we say we are speaking in the name of the workers and the workers' interest. But there are other trade unions with a lot of members, and they can say also they are speaking for the interest of the worker. So how do you manage this situation, and what are the difficulties? It will be also interesting to hear from that. Thank you.
Okay, I think that there are two and raised. I will tell you, Raphael, that what you have just said. I think both questions will be the issues of an in-camera session that we will do in the next months that we have already announced. So we can do an in-camera session just confronting ourselves on how we deal with right, which are the problems with the other unions, because this is a public discussion. I think it's better if we do this in-camera session, and we will do it as soon as possible. I think or in June or in September we will do another session just to discuss among us, among the network of anti-fascist union about this issue. And thank you for sharing your experience. Now I pass the floor to Risu Sain from TUC, Anti-Racism.
Thank you, Nicoletta. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for everyone's presentations. I found them really insightful and just got me thinking. So in the UK, the situation of issues like housing, the cost of living, the economy, jobs are sometimes sometimes directly linked through discourse, but also sometimes tenuously linked as well to outright xenophobia or racism and dog whistle politics. So, when we talk about, for example, housing, obviously we're seeing a lot of mobilization by far-right groups now in asylum accommodation centers across the UK, with this kind of notion that, okay, well, they're going to take over our communities, or they are a kind of inherent threat to our women and girls, or like our communities and our culture and all that kind of stuff. So there's that kind of threat that we're seeing mobilize on the ground a lot, and it happened a lot last year, and that mobilization, and then other stuff around jobs. We're seeing in the workplaces where, again, jobs are a genuine concern for a lot of people, but then they are somewhat linked to like, oh, well, it's the migrants or it's the black and brown people that are taking our jobs, or that's why we can't get jobs. So I guess my question is around like what we're seeing is like there's almost like an increase in mainstream discourse, whether that's through our policies like the Rwanda bill and other policies that have been announced or are being spoken about, like the extremism guidance that we have recently. We're seeing like it is ramping up the culture wars, but then what it's doing is I think there's a bit of a push and a pull from grassroots groups that are being fed like some far right ideas, or are being emboldened by political discourse, mainstream discourse in the UK especially, that then give them the almost like the not the validation, this is not the right word, but something to then go out and mobilize. And another key example of this is our former Home Secretary, Savella Braverman, saying stuff around like the Palestine marches being hate marches. And then there was like a whole tide of like, I think 1,000 patriotic alternative, far right people on the ground that came out on the streets on one of the days of the Palestine marches to protect the cenotaph. And to protect like some of the some of the monuments around central London. So my question is like, is that happening in your respective countries? Are you seeing a correlation with like current mainstream political discourse, and also how that is becoming part of legislation that is emboldening the far right on the ground to like take action? And also, is that happening vice versa? And are there any aspects that trade unions are working on, or like interventions trade unions are working on to eliminate or alleviate some of those things? Thank you.
Thank you, Reese. Please, when you speak, switch on your camera so we can see you. It's better. I think, I don't know if Massimo Frattini is going to do a question. If you're not doing a question, I just give briefly the floor to the panelists to answer to Reese. Okay, so I give the floor first to Magdalena, then to Andrea and Pekka and Tom. Just briefly, and a spot answer to Reed's question.
Okay, if I mean the first, I of course I will. So in Poland perspectives, when we for the very beginning was IT migrant. For at the very beginning, it was 2015. It was IT migrant rhetoric, but later on, it's staying. Everything changes after. Not everything, but the rhetoric, IT migrant rhetoric, collapsed when the war in Ukraine launched, when the 2 million people came here to us, and we know that we need them. So we cannot see this much as you said before, but we all the time have to find about the dialogue. So it was the most important thing of our dialogue in democracy and workplaces. So on this, it is typical what the trade unions do. But if we would like to say about the rhetoric, IT migrants and racism, of course, it is in every country. When we speak about far right, when we speak about Confederacja, so confederation. So yes, indeed, there are typical far right party, and the ideas that was spread. Actually, that is why I like, according to some researchers, the women didn't vote for them. And thanks to actually we in the society, it was not only trade union work, but of course all society work, that we were able to, thanks to young people and especially women, succeed the elections. Nevertheless, I said from the very beginning, the Law and Justice Party, they still won. They still won. Thank you.
Thank you, Maddalena. Andrea, just a spot answer also for you.
Yeah, just a spot. I want to point a fact. In Italy, in the last election, all the parties of the right, the right coalition, they get around 12 million of votes. We don't have to make the mistake to think that in Italy we have 12 million of fascists. They are not all fascists. The people that voted for the right wing in Italy, in the most of the cases, as we said, it was for a very strong social discontent, brought to the point after 11 years of technical government with the progressive parties inside that kind of government that made the worst possible bring in Italy the austerity measures. So we don't have to give them for enemies, all of the people, even the workers that voted for the Giorgia Meloni party the last time, we don't have to consider them as our enemies. That's why, as we said before, we are trying to point the social issues, and with a credibility narrative starting from us as trade union, and to put the spotlight on the contradiction between all the electoral promises of the far right and what they really do when they are at government. That's for us the main point. And of course, talking about the institutional moment, as trade union, we have to have confrontation with this government in Italy. But it's clear that it's very different kind of social dialogue with a far right government or a red government as we have in Italy than with the other one. We always say that, for example, it's the government that doesn't want to have a real confrontation, doesn't want to recognize the role of the trade union, doesn't want to recognize any form of representative of the people, of the workers. So any moment of confrontation and social dialogue with this government now is fake. They bring at the table more than hundreds and hundreds of different kind of yellow unions, association, and they put at the same level the Italian big trade unions, the three big confederal unions, as any kind of other yellow union. So the social dialogue, of course, doesn't work in this moment in Italy.
Thank you, Andrea. Pekka?
Thanks. Yeah, I think the development in a way is quite similar than Riz explained from the UK. Obviously, the anti-immigration and fundamentally racist approach is in the very core. There's even research on this, that even though the Finns party in Finland has changed from being a partly socially oriented populist party with roots in the agrarian populist movement into a more clearly far-right party. But one thing that has remained and has also become a neoliberal party that is eager to cut public finances. But one thing that has remained the same is the anti-immigration policies. Now when they are in the government, the messages have been made a little bit more subtle, toned down a bit, but there is this dog whistle policies still going on. So even though the messages are more subtle, the followers, the more hardline followers of this party and the interlinked different far-right groups, followers know where to reactivate and then push with much more radical, openly racist policies. And we have seen this anti-immigration rhetorics also gaining ground in the more mainstream center-right parties in the government, and also becoming part of, in the eyes of the populist voters, being part of the austerity policies, where the argument goes that now when we need to cut public finances, the first thing we should cut is all expenses related to immigration. And they, of course, think that that is a huge part of public funds that go there. And to close their eyes, of course, and to forget the necessity even of migration to the Finnish economy. But yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Pekka. And now, Tom, or just give us an overall overview of the situation in Europe.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Nicoletta, because I think I can really just refer everyone to the ETUC documents that were agreed upon, which are, we have a cordon sanitaire with ECR and ID, and all affiliates are invited to follow that. That's what we got on when it comes to how you work with it and how you do that in your national context. That's what we have as a document at the moment. And when it comes to the question from your TUC comrade, what do we do about when we're talking about the cultural versus materialist issues? I think that one of the things that we see based on the statistics of the research is that workers care about their real economic problems that do exist, and trade unions have actual responses to those issues. Linking it to immigration or LGBT or women or some other enemy that they have chosen is in fact the problem. I think there are ways that you can talk about immigration, which is something that were shared with us with the researchers from ETUI and from FES. You know, you can talk about immigration where it is a solution, labor shortages, demographic decline, but really the main issues here that we're talking about when it comes to the far right and European elections are that we have specific issues that we need to be getting at the workplace level that will make each one of our lives better and improve our cost of living, improve the way that we live our lives in Europe. And I think that, just to finish there, because we have power at the workplace, remember that when they ask people, who do you trust the most after your family, oftentimes it's another coworker. So when we are inside the workplaces talking to other coworkers, and people who trust each other share the measures that we have in our ETUC manifesto, then your manifesto that is often based on what you created together, then we can make some changes. I think that's where we're going when we're talking about blaming migrants for this. There are real problems, but that's not the major issue. Thanks.
Thank you, Tom. Now I see in the chat Reese is trying to clarifying the question. He says, I think the question that I am trying to work out is if legit concern are about jobs economy, which are tied to race, then should our response explicitly talk about race? I let you think about the clarification that is put in the chat, and but now I pass the floor to Massimo Frattini, who had already raised his hand, and we go back to Ree's question.
Thank you. Mine is just a short update. I'm Massimo. I work for the IUF here in Geneva. The IUF is the International Federation of Food Workers and Hotel Workers. And I just wanted to update about our recent EC meeting last week. As I mentioned in our the first webinar in March, we have a permanent agenda item on the EC. This is based on a resolution passed at our Congress. And the agenda item is actually this, how to fight the far right, xenophobia, and all these movements in the workplaces. So the EC last week had a very interesting panel. The two panelists were one, Andrea Coinu from Fly CGIL, and Hector Morcillo from FTIA in Argentina, both affiliates of the IOF. I will not share what Andrea has said, because actually it actually said what Andrea Malpassi here just presented. So the way the union CGIL and Fly for his sector is doing, and how to promote the referendum. It was interesting for all of us hearing Hector Morcillo from Argentina, and the way the union is responding to the attack of Milei. What Milei is trying to do is basically, we all know, is to destroy the unions. So one of the few say, powers in workplaces in each country that can combat the far right and what it is called neoliberalism, which is actually a fascist government. So by attacking the union, is trying to again silence the workers and push forward the reform is pushing. And it was interesting to understand that in the last 4 months, there have been 4 general strikes in Argentina, and the unions are planning more strikes again to support the workers and to try to resist to the government. A very good, for the moment, a very good news is that the government has withdrawn the project for the labor reform. Of course, this is just a temporary victory, because the unions are very well aware that the government will try again to move this law, to move this bill. But still, we have heard from the labor movement in Argentina that they are really committed to fight back. So it is interesting also to understand how the different unions in different parts of the IOF in that case are also working together, because talking to each other again to get support from each other, and again to fight the fascism, to fight the far right.
Thank you, Massimo. Indeed, in the last webinar of the 10th of April about America, we have had our comrade from Argentina who took his experience, and I think all the unions here are in constant contact with them, supporting the strike and the fight. And we have also made in Montevideo an event of support with the CSA, with the Confederation, International Confederation of Americas. We have done an initiative of support of Argentinian there. So their experience is very important and very inspiring. They are trying to, and in some way, to block the attempt of Milei of restructuring the welfare state and the public services. I don't know if you had the opportunity of reading the clarification there is from TUC as written in the chat, and if someone wants to give another feedback. Pekka.
Yeah, thanks. I think that in the Finnish situation, it's quite obvious that when the present conflict that really mobilizes people is about workers' rights and also austerity. So those are the issues that we will speak, and we are speaking, for example, when we face the European elections and also further on. What I think is also important that as a colleague from Italy referred to, it's not the fact that a significant part of Finns would be racist, But there is a core group in the Finnish party membership and supporters that are. And now their cooperation that they managed to have with more mainstream right-wing parties and movements give them power. So I think it is important to also to show people the majority, the great majority of which are not racists in the like radical sense, to show that this party that is now in government has really dark connections to the extremist racist movements, both in the country and internationally. So in that sense, I think it's important to also address this issue. And of course, then also to discuss like real questions of immigration policies, because if we leave this very difficult and sensitive issue to the far right, then definitely they will own it, and we can't afford that either. But that doesn't mean that it would be an issue where the progressive parties will win the elections. The workers' rights and economic policies are definitely those issues.
Thank you, Pekka. Oh, let's see if someone else wants to speak. I think that maybe Reese was also saying something tied to the fact, and I think maybe it's a thing that happens all over Europe and not only United Kingdom, that some jobs are tied to some race. So it was talking about this, I think, but I'm not sure. And so he was asking if we should talk, should give explicitly our response about race. But I think that many of you have already answered very well to his question. Riz, I give you the floor. If you can please switch on your camera.
Sorry, just give me 1 second.
We can't see you. Is it possible to switch on your?
You should be able to see me now.
Okay, thank you.
So I just to clarify, I think what I'm saying, I am not saying that, or I agree with you that, like, you know, a significant set of people in Italy or across who might vote for these things in legitimate concerns are not racist or are not fascist. That's not what I'm trying to say. I completely agree on that point. But I think the policy itself is racist, or it could be, you know, far right. Like it is, right? So there's a significance difference between the people who are voting maybe for their concerns, but then there's, you know, the policy itself is how it stands, and that's the reality. So my question is, like, when we talk, when they talk about housing, let's say the far right, whether they don't bring in race as an explicit thing, they might say it as in terms of, well, we know who they're referring to. When they talk about jobs, when they talk about, you know, deindustrialization or communities falling apart, my question, what I am trying to work out from, at least from our side, is if we don't bring in race when they are bringing it into their narratives, and when we're talking about housing, when we don't talk about that, are we also then somewhat like maybe not reinforcing, but like there's something that's missing from our narrative? So for example, if we were to talk about the economy or jobs, if we were to explicitly mention race in our narratives, or like in our response, or in our documents, literature, manifestos, whatever we produce, and say, well, actually housing for everyone should be, you know, like people should live with dignity, no matter if they are black, white, brown, or from a migrant status. I'm just talking about some kind of explicit mention when we talk about jobs, when we talk about like good paying, decent, secure jobs. When we make that what is the word, like when we make that commitment, or we say this is what we want, should we be mentioning race and class to a certain element explicitly in our responses. It's just I was interesting because I think, Tom, your presentation was really interesting because it got me started thinking about the material and the cultural. And you know, there's obviously a huge material issue in the UK, but then there's also huge culture wars happening in the UK at the moment. So we're fighting not only on the economic stuff, but there is a whole discourse and narrative that we have to, as trade unionists, fight as well, because that's more about look at all these people, they're threatening our, you know, our lives, or they're threatening our spaces. So I guess that's my question, probably not any more clearer than it was when I put it in the text. But I guess more than anything, I just thought it's good. It's a good discussion point. I'm trying to still working it out, and I think there's no answer to it, but it's something to think about. Like, should we be more explicit in our stuff? Thank you.
Thank you, Riz. I see that Tom has raised his hand, and Andrea and Martin.
Okay, so thank you very much, Nicoletta. I'll just go quickly. I think I don't have the answer for Riz, so that's why I'm going to go fast, is because I don't know everything about all the communications, but I think that one thing that we see is that when you ask Europeans what they care about, you saw the list of all the things they cared about. And then the far right says, okay, you care about all these things, but look who's causing it. But the truth is, it's not about, we don't need to enter into their narratives, because these problems do exist, whether we don't have cost of living, a good cost of living, we can't afford houses, can't afford, I don't know, make a university in like the United Kingdom. There's issues that we cannot get that are just not good. And the reason that those exist are for a reason, which is the economic and social system that allows them to exist, that allows people to have so much wealth, so much power. When you say, why am my pay not going up? Why can I not join a union? Why is there union busting? All of these things have real answers, which are economic and social, and they are not racial. The far right will try to convince us that they are, but they are cultural issues in the sense that they're our culture, that we want to feel good, a Europe that we're proud of. At the same time, these are economic issues that are caused by real things. They don't just exist out of the blue. Some countries have better housing policies than others. It is about political, economic, and social advancement, and that's the only way we're ever going to be able to fight back, is by things that trade unions can do, which is change the economic and social material conditions of workers.
Thank you, Shannon. Andrea, and then Martin.
If I understood, of course, we have the problem that the far right and the right, even the right, always try to ride the social discontent, spreading around the words of racism, of xenophobia, of discrimination. Of course, they try to ride the social discontent with their awful words. We are very aware of this, of course, and in any possible situation, we react against the cultural attempt to put the racism inside the Italian society, inside the Italian topics. Of course, at the same time, I repeat again, we try to be the most credible possible, fighting against the social causes of this, to bring out of the Italian society the humus, would I say, the possibilities for that racist position to find a fertile ground. That's what, as trade union, we try to do, to fight on the cultural level against the racism, of course, at the same time, fight against the social causes of it.
Thank you, Andrea. Then Martin.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, everyone, also for your valuable contributions, especially also relevant. Unfortunately, I have to say at the same time, in the context of the Netherlands, because as you know, we're on the forefront more or less when it comes to the far right winning terrain in our government. We had, of course, the PVV, like a extreme right wing party who won largely in the last elections. They're currently forming extreme right-wing government, and they presented the framework of their governmental plans just a few days ago. So I thought it might be relevant also to have a short update here. And yeah, obviously, as expected, it's an attack on many issues that we stand for as a union, as FNV. Just a brief summary of the points. I mean, it's an attack on the freedom of protest. There will be more strict rules around protests. It will be limiting also the type of protests that are allowed to take place in public spaces. The definition of membership of a terrorist organization will be expanded, and the punishments will increase. Also, criminal law will be connected to migration law. So that would mean in practice that migrants that are involved in crimes, their Dutch status will be more easily removed. So that also brings me to the second point, that it's also an attack to migrants and migrant workers. The agreement proudly announced that it will be the most strict governmental plans regarded to migration ever in the history of the Netherlands. They propose an opt-out of the EU agreements regarding migration plans, and at the same time it's introducing some kind of crisis law that has as a proposal to make it more easy to expel and also to incarcerate people without a legal status in the Netherlands. Also, when it comes to social and economic measures, like the plans are pretty awful, like the proposed increase of the minimum wage is cancelled. There will be large budget cuts regarding unemployment services and other social services. There are heavy budget cuts also in the public sector, like 22% of the budget of public servants will be cut. So there will be huge rounds of people that will be fired in that sector, most probably, if these plans are to be actually executed. There are also budget cuts on education, and especially higher education. It's also an attack on the free press. There are budget cuts for public television and increase on taxes on independent newspapers. And last but not least, it's also an attack to international solidarity. There's like an incredible budget cut of 2.4 billion, which is basically destroying the whole budget on international solidarity of our previous governments. So yeah, like I said, it is obvious that it's a general attack to what we stand for as a union. We also make a very strong declaration against all these plans. It was released the day before yesterday. Our president, Tuur Elsinga, made an analysis and pronounced himself against all these plans. All the different sectors also made their own releases, press releases. It's still not completely clear if this government will be actually installed, but it is, it depends on negotiations in the near future and if they can find a prime minister. They're currently in a crisis because the one they were planning to have on this position renounced. But it's pretty likely that this government will be the government for the future times, and that we will have to organize actions around all these horrible plans. And from this position also, from my position on the international department, these spaces of exchange in this particular network are very useful to hear all the experiences of the different unions and comrades from other countries that are already in this situation, for us also to prepare ourselves better for the future to come. I already made this announcement in the previous webinar, but I'm going to do it again. In this one, on the 21st of September, we organize FNV's International Solidarity Festival, and we're planning to also have a discussion there on trade unions organizing internationally against the far right. So I hope this space can also be useful to expand any plans that come out of this platform. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. And we do understand from all your testimonies that with far right, Europe will be less social, and we will have less welfare, less public services. All the things, all the fundamentals, pillars on which Europe is founded will be weakened. And that's the reason, because we have to fight hard against fair right. And we have 10 minutes left. I don't know if you want to say something, if there are other intervention, maybe someone who has not spoken yet. Well, just to add something to the question that Reese has done before about housing and race, we can say, and this is what Andrea Malpassi has already said, we have tools against anti-migrants laws. For example, we have a positive experience in Veneto, one of the region guided by Lega Nord, who had planted a law for housing against migrants, because to access to public housing, you needed to have a 5 year of staying in the region. But a lot of associations, included the SUNIA, that's the Union of Tenants tied to CGIL, filed an appeal to the Constitutional Court, and the law was cancelled. That is a very important tool, because these are politics that far right plans, but we also have tools to fight against them, because we have, for example, in Italy, a stronger constitution. Salvatore, I see you. Maybe you want to say something. Want to say something? Oh, yes. Yes, okay. I read the chat. Yes, in June we are going very, very likely on the 20th of June, we are going to organize another webinar. You know that June is the month of the Pride. We are going to organize another webinar of the anti-fascist network of unions, about gender issues, LGBT QR plus, and also gender issues, and far right. We are planning, we are just preparing it, so I can tell you at the moment who we are going to invite, because we are preparing the webinar, but it will be in English, and it will be on the 20th of June. And next, we will have the webinar about the African region, and also the in-camera that we have announced. So an in-camera webinar in which we can just have a different kind of discussion. So if nobody has nothing to add, I thank you all. And before all, I thank the 4 speakers, Magdalena, Andrea, Pekka, and Tom. It was a very, very inspiring webinar, and it's very useful, above all in this period, just before the European election. Please, Tom, send us your presentation. And I hope to see you at the next webinar, and good luck, and finger crossed for the European election. Let's keep on fighting, comrades and brothers and sisters. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Much.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Come
Bye.
together.
Bye bye. Thank you.